Tired of restless nights and waking up drained? What if I told you the secret to deeper, more restorative sleep isn't in what you do before bed, but immediately after you wake up? Join me as we transform your mornings into a powerful ritual using ancient Buddhist practices to reprogram your body and mind for the best sleep of your life. Imagine waking up each day feeling truly refreshed, ready to conquer anything. It sounds like a dream, right? But what if the key to unlocking that profound sleep wasn't about counting sheep, but about cultivating mindfulness and gratitude the moment your eyes open? Discover how a simple Buddhist morning routine can revolutionize your nights. Forget everything you thought you knew about getting a good night's sleep. This isn't about expensive gadgets or complicated bedtime routines. We're about to unlock a powerful connection between your mornings and your sleep quality, showing you how specific Buddhist practices adopted right after you wake can lead to deeper, more peaceful rest every single night. Chap 1: The Sleep-Wake Cycle. Why mornings matter for nights. If you have ever wondered, why is it that I go to bed early, turn off my phone, close my eyes for so long, and yet sleep still does not come? Then perhaps the answer is not found in tonight, but in your morning. Tonight, before you drift into sleep, let us gently listen to a quiet story. A story about the sleep-wake cycle, about the morning light, and about how your body has been silently preparing for your sleep long before the night ever falls. Within each of us, there lives an invisible clock. It does not tick. It has no hands, no numbers. Yet it quietly guides when you feel alert, when you feel sleepy, when your body needs to move, and when it needs to rest. This clock is called the biological rhythm. It does not follow your will. You cannot command it. Now, go to sleep. It listens only to very simple signals: light, darkness, and the rhythm of your daytime life. And here is what matters most. Your biological rhythm begins counting the time of nighttime sleep from the morning. When you wake up, light, whether it is gentle sunlight or simply daylight passing through a window, touches your eyes. In that moment, your brain receives a clear message. A new day has begun. That message sets off a series of biological responses. Your body begins producing cortisol, a hormone that helps you stay awake, focused, and ready to meet the world. It may sound strange, but this morning cortisol is the very foundation for nighttime melatonin, the hormone of sleep. When cortisol is released at the right time, in the right amount, and then slowly declines throughout the day, the body remembers this rhythm. So when night arrives, melatonin can appear naturally. In other words, a well-aligned morning is a quiet promise of deep sleep at night. But now, think back to your own mornings. Perhaps they begin with an alarm ringing in panic, your body jolting awake, heart racing, your hand reaching for the phone, your mind already crowded with worries before your feet even touch the ground. Sunlight, maybe you have not seen it yet. A deep breath, perhaps long forgotten. A morning like this sends a very different message to the body. Danger, stress, stay alert. Cortisol appears, and then it stays too long. It refuses to fade as the day passes. So at night, when you finally lie down, the body is still on guard. This is the paradox. A chaotic morning can steal the sleep of an entire night. Your body does not remember out of resentment, it simply responds. It does not judge you, it does not blame you. It only responds to what you have been offering it. If the day is filled with tension, with artificial light, with too much sitting still and too much worrying, then at night, the body simply does not understand why it should sleep now. Sleep is not a switch you turn on and off. It is the result of a long chain of signals that flows through the entire day, and that chain always begins in the morning. Chapter 2, The Buddhist Awakening, Setting the Stage for Rest. In the Buddhist tradition, people often speak of mindfulness, but mindfulness does not mean tension. It is not control. It is not forcing ourselves to understand something profound. Mindfulness is simply knowing where we are in each small moment of life. And if there is one moment that modern humans most often forget, it is the very first moment of the morning. We often wake up not with presence, but with habit, not with the breath, but with the sound of an alarm, not with body and mind together, but with worries already waiting from yesterday. Yet on the path the Buddha taught, that very first moment is where the seeds of deep rest at night are planted. Waking up or being pulled out of sleep, there is a subtle difference between waking up and being pulled out of sleep. When we are pulled out, the mind immediately contracts. The body has not yet understood what is happening. The heartbeat shifts, the breath becomes shallow, and in that very instant, the chain of a day's tension begins. In Buddhism, no moment is small. Every beginning carries a direction. If the morning begins in panic, the mind learns to run for the rest of the day. And at night, when you wish it to stop, it no longer knows how to be still. So before thinking about what to do for the new day, Buddhism invites us to return to the simplest thing, the breath. The first breath is not an exercise. It is a very quiet ritual. No one sees it, no one judges it. There is only you and the moment of waking. As your eyes open, let everything else wait a little longer. There is no need to rush. Nothing is so important that it cannot wait for 3 breaths. Breathing in, knowing you are breathing in. Breathing out, knowing you are breathing out. This breath is not meant to achieve anything. Not to be better, not to be more peaceful, only to be present. In the Dharma, simply being present is already enough. When the mind is reminded that it does not need to run right away, it slowly relearns how to soften. A mind that can soften during the day will find sleep much more easily at night. There is something we often overlook. The body remembers far more strongly than the mind. Compressed tensions, unreleased urgency, rushed movements. All of these are stored in the body as tiny imprints. So when night comes, even if you have forgotten the events of the day, the body still holds their echoes. That is why Buddhism does not separate body and mind. For the mind to be at ease, the body must first be allowed to settle. Gentle, mindful movement, not to be strong, but to be soft. Movement in the Buddhist spirit is not about conquering the body, not about burning energy, not about improving performance. It serves one humble purpose: to return to the feeling of being alive in this body. In the morning, only a very short sequence is needed. Slow, soft, no loud music. No counting repetitions. Stretch as if you were waking a child. Roll the neck and shoulders as if gently untying small knots. In each movement, you do not need to look beautiful. You only need to be real. When the body is allowed to soften from early morning, it will not need to hold that tightness until you lie down at night. And a body that is not clenched is a gentle invitation to sleep, anchoring the mind with gratitude. Before you leave the bed, before the world begins to demand, offer your mind an anchor. In Buddhism, this is called gratitude. Not because life is always easy, but because in any circumstance we are still here. Anchoring in gratitude is not positive thinking. It is recognizing what is already present. 3 things. Very specific, very real. They do not need to be beautiful. They do not need to be noble. They only need to be true. Perhaps you're still breathing. The the morning light is here, or simply last night you did your best to live fully. In Buddhism, gratitude is a form of dwelling. When the mind knows sufficiency, it no longer needs to wander. A mind anchored in gratitude from the morning will find it easier to let go when night comes. When the mind has a place to rest, it will not be carried too far away. And when night falls, a mind that does not wander will more easily find its way home to sleep. Sleep, the result of a day lived with presence. Buddhism does not see sleep as a problem to be fixed. It sees sleep as a result, the result of how you live, how you breathe, how you walk, how you treat yourself in moments no one else sees. If all day you are never allowed to pause, then at night the mind will not know how to stop. But if the morning was present, gentle, unhurried, the body will remember that rhythm. And when the lights go out, that rhythm becomes a lullaby. Chapter 3, Practical Application, Integrating the Practices. There is a very common misunderstanding that calmness is something to be achieved only after great effort, that we need more discipline, more methods, more trying. But in the spirit of Buddhism and in the simple truth of the human body and mind, calm does not come from doing more. It comes from doing just enough and doing it with full presence. The practices you have heard about in the previous chapters do not exist on their own. They are like small streams of water that, when brought together, form a gentle flow, leading you from a mindful morning to an evening of letting go. This chapter is not meant to teach you anything new. It only helps you weave together what is already very simple, so that daily life itself naturally becomes a preparation for deep sleep. Modern people often try to understand everything through thinking, but the body is different. The body does not learn through theory. It learns through feeling. So when it comes to breathing and movement, what matters is not remembering the correct technique, but seeing and feeling. If you can imagine, or better yet, gently witness a slow breath entering, a shoulder softly dropping, a stretch without effort, then your body has already begun to understand correct without the mind needing to analyze. In Buddhism, this is a very ancient way of teaching. Seeing in order to understand, doing in order to know. When you practice morning movements, let them be very few, so few that you cannot do them wrong. One deep breath, one long exhale, a slow stretch of the arms, a small roll of the shoulders. No need to add more, no need for a full routine. Here, precision is not in the form, but in gentleness. A gentle movement teaches the body, today, there is no need to fight. And the body, having learned this lesson in the morning, will not carry tension all the way into the night. When the breath becomes the thread that runs through the day, the breath is not only present in the first few minutes of the morning, it is there all day long, whether you remember it or not. But when you begin the day with a conscious breath, the breath becomes a very fine thread that connects the moments of that day. You may forget it when you are busy, but in a slowed moment, while waiting, while sitting still, when tired, the body will naturally return to that familiar rhythm. And in the evening, when you lie down, that breath appears again, like an old friend who knows exactly how to lead you into sleep. Sleep does not need to be invited. It only needs the entrance to be recognized. Journaling to soften, clearing the mind before it becomes too full. Some thoughts are not frightening because they are big, but because they are left unspoken. During the day, you pass through many things, small emotions, brief tensions, joys that were never fully felt. If all of these are held inside, then at night, when everything becomes quiet, they will appear one by one. That is why short morning journaling can can have such a deep effect on sleep at night. Not to analyze, not to explain, only to place the mind onto paper, a very short writing, perhaps just a few lines, focused on gratitude, 3 specific things, just as you anchor the mind before leaving the bed. When you write what you are grateful for, the mind learns something important. I do not need to hold everything in my head. And when the mind does not have to hold, it does not need to repeat. At night, wandering thoughts are often things that were never set down. Writing in the morning is a way of setting them down early, gently, softly, with compassion toward yourself. Living space, a mirror of the inner world, annotates. In Buddhism, outer space and inner space always influence each other. A messy room is not a moral failure, but it sends a clear message to the mind, not finished. And when the mind repeatedly receives the signal of unfinished, it does not rest easily. Creating your own sacred space does not mean turning the bedroom into something formal or elaborate. It simply means removing what is unnecessary, keeping what truly supports rest. A tidy bed, soft light, fewer distracting objects. When you tidy your bedroom in the evening or even in the morning, you are not only arranging objects, you're telling the mind, tonight there is a place to stop. And waking up in a quiet space, the morning itself will begin much more gently. Sacred space, not a place, but a feeling of safety. The word sacred does not have to belong to religion. Here it simply means safe. A sacred space is where you do not need to defend yourself. No need to perform, no need to be anyone else. An ideal bedroom is where your body understands. Here there is no need for tension, a familiar blanket, a very subtle scent, a small, tidy corner. These very small things become signals to the nervous system. And when the nervous system receives enough signals of safety, it allows sleep to happen. Integration, not for perfection, but for consistency. You do not need to do everything every day. You do not need to remember everything. You do not need to do it right. What matters most is gentle consistency. One morning breath, one soft movement, one line of gratitude, one less cluttered space. Just one of these, done with presence, is enough to shift the rhythm of the whole day. And when the rhythm changes, sleep will follow. Chapter 4, Beyond the Morning, Ripple Effects on Your Day. Some changes do not happen all at once. They are not loud. There is no moment of, oh, I've changed. They spread quietly, like a small stone dropped into still water. A mindful morning is like that. You may not feel anything special after the first breath, after a few slow movements, after a line of gratitude written in a hurry, but then by midday, you notice you are a little less tense. By afternoon, you are not as exhausted as usual. And by evening, you no longer have to ask, why is it so hard for me to fall asleep? Morning does not affect only the morning. It quietly shapes the entire day. In modern life, we often try very hard to focus. We force ourselves to sit still, force ourselves to finish, force ourselves not to be distracted. But true concentration is not born from force. It arises from a settled nervous system. When the morning begins in haste, the mind is activated from the very first moment. It shifts into alert mode, constantly scanning for problems, constantly worrying about things that have not yet happened. In that state, focus becomes a struggle. But when the morning begins in calm, the nervous system receives a very different message. Today, there is no need to run. And when there is no need to run, the mind naturally stays longer with what it is doing. You do not have to try to be more productive. You are simply pulled away less. focus then is like a steady stream of water, not strong, but unbroken. There's a deep misunderstanding that productivity only comes when we push ourselves to the limit. But in reality, a tired mind may be busy, yet rarely effective. A gentle morning does not slow you down. It simply helps you wear yourself out less quickly. When you give your body and mind a little space at the start of the day, you no longer have to spend the whole day defending yourself. Energy is used more wisely. Less is wasted. Less is pulled into unnecessary thoughts. And at the end of the day, you may be tired, but it is a wholesome tiredness. Tired from living, not from holding yourself tight. Reducing stress, not by avoiding, but by preparing. Stress does not come only from difficult tasks. It comes from entering the day without having truly arrived. When the morning passes in chaos, every challenge of the day appears on a background of tension. An email, a conversation, a small issue can easily feel overwhelming. But when you have cared for yourself since the morning, even just a little, you carry a quiet feeling. I am not completely empty. That feeling does not make problems disappear, but it changes how you meet them. Stress no longer crashes in. It becomes just a wave passing through. Anxiety softens when the mind no longer stays on constant guard. Anxiety rarely speaks loudly. It whispers. It repeats. It appears most often when everything is quiet. A morning without mindfulness teaches the mind a dangerous habit, always stepping ahead of the present, always predicting, always preparing for the worst. But when the morning begins with care, even gently, the mind learns something else. I can stay here for a while. And the ability to stay is anxiety's natural counterbalance. You do not need to push anxiety away. You only need not to let it drive the whole day. Emotional regulation, when reacting is replaced by responding. You may not notice, but many emotional outbursts do not come from big events. They come from being depleted beforehand. When too much energy is spent in the morning, by noon, a small thing can make you irritable. By afternoon, a careless word can make you sad. But when the morning begins gently, there is space inside you. That space is where emotions can pass through without exploding. You do not become indifferent. You are simply less carried away. In Buddhism, this is the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is fast, but it exhausts us. Responding is slower, but it keeps us whole. A more balanced view, when nothing becomes everything. A mindful day is not a day without problems. It is a day where problems do not fill the entire sky. A calm morning creates an inner anchor. From there, everything is seen from just the right distance. You still care, you still try, but you no longer equate a difficult moment with your entire being. And that perspective is what creates steadiness. You may not think about sleep at all during the day, and that is a good thing. When the morning is in rhythm, when the day does not wear you down too much, when emotions are regulated, when anxiety does not occupy the whole mind, then in the evening, sleep is no longer a goal. It is simply a natural destination. You do not need to call for it. You only need to lie down. The day has already done its work. Chap 5, Cultivating Deeper Sleep, Long-Term Transformation. There is one very important thing we often forget when talking about sleep. Sleep does not like. The more you try to force it, the more it slips away. The more you wait for it, the later it arrives. But sleep is deeply loyal to what is steady and gently repeated. It does not need big changes. It needs consistency, not perfection, just sincerity. Lasting change does not happen overnight. It unfolds quietly through each morning, through each rhythm of life, adjusted just a little. Tracking progress, listening, not grading for. When people talk about tracking sleep, they often think immediately of numbers, devices, apps, charts. But in the spirit of mindfulness, tracking does not mean judging. Tracking simply means listening. You do not need to know exactly how many hours you slept. You do not need to know what percentage was deep sleep. Instead, pay attention to gentler questions. When you wake up, how does your body feel? Is your mind heavy or light enough to begin the day? Does the morning require too much effort just to get out of bed? The quality of sleep often reveals itself most clearly in the natural clarity of the morning. If you wake up without feeling pulled out of sleep, if your breath is unhurried, if your mind is not immediately filled with worries, that is already a very good sign. You may write it down briefly, 1 line, 2 lines, 2 lines, not to analyze, just to notice change. That noticing is what allows a habit to grow over time. Sometimes you may not feel that you slept more deeply, but you may notice that you are less irritable, or a little less anxious, or that you no longer overthink when lying down. That too is sleep slowly returning. Deep sleep is not measured only by the number of hours your eyes are closed. It is measured by how rested you feel while living. When the day itself is less tense, the night does not need to compensate as much. Not everyone has a slow morning. Not everyone has a gentle schedule. Some people must wake very early. Some work in shifts. Some live within rhythms that cannot be changed right away. And this is important to remember. Practice should not become a burden. If you must wake early, you do not need to extend the practice. You can shorten it. 1 mindful breath is still a complete breath. 1 moment of gratitude is still enough to anchor the mind. If the morning is too rushed, you can move that gentleness to another moment in the day, while waiting, while washing your hands, while stepping into the light. What matters is not when, but whether you allow yourself to pause. There will be days when you forget to practice, days when the morning passes too quickly, days when you fall back into old habits. That does not mean everything is lost. On the path of mindfulness, there is no failure. There is only noticing. Each time you notice you were rushing, without blaming yourself, you have already returned to the path. Sleep does not need you to be right every day. It needs you not to fight yourself. Adjusting habits to serve life, not impose on it. A good habit is one that can bend to real life. Some days you may only do a very small part. Other days you may do more. That is okay. Consistency is not about quantity, it is about attitude. If each morning you remember to return to body and mind, even for a brief moment, that habit is already taking root. The human body naturally knows how to sleep deeply. Over time, it simply becomes disturbed by a life that is too fast, too bright, too tense. When you maintain gentle mornings, the body begins to trust again. Trust that the day has its rhythm, the night has its rest. Trust that it does not need to stay alert all the time. And as that trust grows stronger, deep sleep becomes less rare, it becomes familiar. Not always perfect, but steady enough that you no longer fear the night. Sleep is not a skill. It is a relationship between you and yourself. When you begin to treat yourself with patience, with listening, with nonviolent beginnings, that relationship slowly heals, and sleep like an old friend will return when it is no longer forced. And now, as you are listening to these words, you may not notice any clear change yet. That is okay. Sustainable transformations always happen quietly. They are like roots growing deep underground. You cannot see them. But one day you will notice that you sleep more peacefully, wake more lightly, and live a little more slowly without effort. Let everything unfold in its own rhythm. You do not need to push. You only need to continue being gentle. Now, let your body rest. No need to think further, no need to remember anything else. Tonight, let it simply be night, and you simply allow yourself to sleep.